Hello and welcome to INPAA Baby Safety Month, Home Safety Week. INPAA is committed to the promotion of infant safety and works closely with regulatory authorities, international affiliates and industry members to improve infant safety. This is achieved by raising awareness within the Australian nursery industry on the safe supply and use of products and advocacy of injury prevention strategies. INPAA is also a member of Standards Australia committees that develop safety standards for nursery products. As a baby products industry veteran, member of the INPAA Advisory Council and Baby Safety Month Organising Committee, and a proud personal safety ambassador, I am honoured to be representing INPAA in this home safety panel discussion. I'm really proud to be a part of this inaugural INPAA Baby Safety Month. This is just the beginning as we build out an annual program dedicated to baby safety that is all about empowerment via education. It really is great to see key industry leaders truly collaborating to actively drive reductions in preventable injuries through increased product safety and vital education resources to help you navigate the most challenging and rewarding journey of all, parenting. As we have all been dealing with the many challenges of COVID, including working from home and homeschooling, it's more important than ever to raise awareness about home safety. My name is Teresa Thompson, and I'm delighted to be joined in today's home safety session by Melanie Courtney, mum of two very active children and CEO of Kidsafe Victoria. Mel is very passionate about the for-purpose sector and has been employed in various roles within Kidsafe Victoria since 2006 and taking on the CEO role in 2010. I'm also joined by Peter Cockburn, father of four girls, builder, and currently vice chair of the Georgina Josephine Foundation, as we discuss safety in and around the home. Welcome to you both. And let's kick this session off with you, Mel. Tell me a bit about Kidsafe and the organisation's role in preventing unintentional injuries to children.
Thanks so much, Teresa. I'm really excited to be here to chat with you both today. Our role at Kidsafe is to work in preventing unintentional injuries, so those that people typically term as accidents. That can be something that happens in the home, on the road, around water, at play. Kidsafe as an organisation, we were started in 1979 by a group of paediatricians who were seeing over 700 deaths every single year to children from preventable injuries. That's a staggering number. We're down to just over 150 at the moment, which is a huge improvement, but it's still 3 children every single week. And it's families like Peter and Emma who are changed forever. And, you know, we meet so many of those families. Our role at Kidsafe is to empower families to make sure that they do know about the issues and about the hazards that might be around them and around their children. You know, from our perspective, safety is often something that's it's not really top of mind until something happens. You know, you get, particularly for new first-time parents, you get really caught up in the sleeping and the feeding bits, and safety is not often top of mind until something happens. And then it's just, you know, it's a split second is the difference between just a complete non-event and just something that's life-changing. So, you know, we work really closely with families, with the community and with government, industry, such as INPAA as well, to make sure that families are empowered to make safe choices for their children.
Mel, what's changed during COVID in terms of the injuries and distractions, perhaps whilst working from home? Can you give us a bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in Victoria, we've been in lockdown most of the last 18 months, and families have been doing it really tough. You know, juggling often children of multiple ages, so children that might have been in daycare, you've got homeschooling of older children as well as trying to work from home, and then just parenting and life in general. It's been a really, really tough gig for families, and unfortunately we've seen that reflected in terms of the child injury deaths and serious traumas as well. So, you know, in Victoria last year, we had 29 deaths for the year from child injury. We had 17 as an average for the 3 years prior. So it's a huge increase. And you know, in terms of burn safety as well, it's just families being distracted. It's never intentional with the space that we're in, but you know, you get distracted and you're cooking and you're trying to do so many different things at once. And you know, kids, they're just so curious. They get where they're not supposed to be, and you know, they're just so quick. So it's really difficult. So yeah, it's been a really tough time for families over the COVID period.
So where do most injuries occur, and what types of injuries do you see?
So most injuries occur in the home, which makes a lot of sense because it's where children spend most of their time. And we're talking particularly the 0 to 5 age group where, we do, they like I said before, they're curious and they're just getting into everything that they can. It's also where they're learning to walk, where they're learning to crawl, and houses aren't particularly built with children in mind. So it's often after the effect modifications that need to be made to make sure that the home is safe. So in terms of the injuries that we do see, driveways, which Peter will obviously talk to you about, also burns and scalds, poisons, water safety, there's a whole host of areas within the home that can be a danger.
Wow, that is a lot of different causes of injuries. So where do parents start? What can they do to help avoid and prevent these injuries?
Well, the first thing is to be aware of it. So I think anyone already watching this interview is ahead because they're aware of what to do. We've got a home safety checklist at Kidsafe that people can download, and it really is the best way to do it because there are so many things that you can think about or you can miss if you don't have a sort of structured way of going through your house. Everyone's house is different. The hazards will be different everywhere. But things that people don't tend to think about are things like button batteries. So basically, if you've got anything that's small, if it lights up or if it makes noise, it's probably got a button battery in it. It can take less than 2 hours for a button battery to burn through a child's esophagus. And at the moment, we're seeing around 20 kids a week presenting to hospitals across Australia from button battery ingestion. So, that's a really big one. Furniture tip overs as well. So making sure that, if you've got a big bookcase that can't be secured or cordoned off from children, then get rid of it. My brother, I remember he got rid of his with his kids. We've secured ours to the wall. So make sure that you can secure it. Curtain and blind cords as well. If you're in a new home or one that's had curtain and blind cords installed since 2010, you'll be fine. But if not, you need to make sure that they are secured. We've had 2 deaths in the last 18 months from curtain and blind cord strangulations, which is just, it's just so devastating for families. So, it's really getting that home safety checklist and going around the house and making sure you secure what you can. And then the other best bit of advice that we have is to have a safe play area so that you can, go and have a coffee or go to the toilet, in the pandemic when you've been stuck at home, do those things that families really need to do, but make sure that you know that your child is in a safe play area when they're doing it. Actually, and just one more thing, get down on your hands and knees and crawl around the house. It sounds crazy, and we don't recommend for heavily pregnant females to do it or anyone that's got a bad back or anything like that. But, if you get down, you look at things from their perspective and, we see a bookcase, they see stairs that they want to climb up and get something on top. So, it's little things like that it's really important to do really early and to do regularly as well as their developmental needs change. And, they can access different things as they start walking and pulling along things more too.
Thanks, Mel. Some really great points. I mean, I can totally see how the perspective of getting down there at that level and seeing what they see is vital to helping navigating the home and doing that checklist together. I would say too, based on my experience, baby monitors can help here as well in terms of keeping that critical extra eye on Bub. So what about water safety? Is that something that parents with a new baby need to think about yet or not until their child is a bit older, say preschool age?
Oh, look, it's a really interesting one. And that in Victoria too, Victoria and nationally, I should say, we've had a huge increase in the number of drownings over the last 12 months. So, drowning is an issue from a very early age, as soon as children become mobile, really. We've had drownings in Vic in the last 12 months from rivers, dams. We even had one in a pond and in a pet bowl. So it's just that few centimetres of water. It just has to cover the nose and the mouth. That's all it takes for a child to drown. And they're top heavy. So when they fall into something, even if it is as small as a pet bowl, it's really hard for them to get themselves up. So water safety, we actually shared a story recently about a family whose child fell into an esky, and they were just so lucky that the water was so cold that it actually kept the child alive, and they've had a really good outcome. But for every fatal drowning, there are a significant number of non-fatal drownings, which have, lifelong serious outcomes as well in terms of disability. So, water safety, it's just something that you need, again, families need to be aware of. It might be a bucket that's empty in your backyard and then you have a downpour of rain. and all of a sudden it's a drowning hazard. So again, it's just being mindful of those things and thinking about, in your house, what can you do to prevent that happening? And farms are a completely different situation altogether, and that's where things like a safe play area come into play, because obviously there's so many hazards there, and there might be dams and things like that that are a hazard for children.
Thanks, Mel. So, it's really important, I think, for everyone to understand that whatever the space is that you're sharing, whether it's in the home or outside and around the home, it's really important to look at all of those things that you've just talked about. And you also mentioned driveway safety earlier as well, which I think Peter can talk specifically to. So, Peter, welcome, and please tell us about your foundation and what led you to starting this.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, thanks for letting us be a part of this Baby Safety Month. Unfortunately, I was one of those parents that actually ran over my little girl. She was my youngest child. She was 15 months old. And I come home from work like I do every day, and I reversed my tool trailer into the garage. I wasn't aware that she was in the garage at the time, and pretty much lost her on the spot. So when this happened, obviously it was devastating, and my wife and I we were beside ourselves. So we decided to have a look on the internet to see how often this happens, and we were just blown away that it happens all the time, pretty much. So we decided to form our own foundation, Georgina Josephine Foundation, under her name, and it's to support families that have been through this, and also to try and create awareness on and prevention of this accident from occurring. It was extremely difficult at the time, but we needed to get our message out there, and so obviously it doesn't happen to anybody else.
Of course. So, Peter, what can parents and carers learn from you and understand what to do to help keep their kids safe around cars?
Yeah, so we pretty much come up with a strategy along with Kidsafe as well on a three-phase approach that we try and create, which is supervise, separate, and see. So obviously number one is going to be to supervise our children, to make sure that we've got our eye on them all the time. But the reality is that we can't always do that. It's obviously going to be number one, but we also need to put other measures in place to prevent them from being near the cars, which is separate. In our opinion, if they're not near the vehicles, then they're not going to get obviously run over. So what we try and do is look at our own environment, and also where we're going to take our children to be as well. For example, if we go babysitting at our grandparents. So we look at our house and think, what can I do to separate the kids from the cars? So in our instance, we have an attached garage, and I drove my car into my own house. Now, when I think about it, what are we doing? Because all it takes is for that door to be left open, and they can crawl in there in the cars. We haven't got a chance of seeing them. So we could actually, for the garage, what we could do is actually put that door handle going into the garage up to 1,500 high, just like you do in a pool barrier, a pool fence. Also have it on a self-closer that goes back in towards the house. That way, if they go and get a chair, they can hop up there. They still can't open the door because they need to pull it back towards them. Have that on a self-closer, so the door is always going to go back to the closed position, that we know that door is always closed and they can't get in there unless they're supervised. So that's one way to keep them out in the garage, like what happened to myself. The other one is our driveways. Our driveways are probably one of the biggest factors of this low-speed run-over vehicles. The thing is that we let our children play in our driveways. So what we need to do is, once again, look at our environment and think, what can I do to create a safe place for my child to play for, that when I'm not there, like if somebody turns up, a friend turns up, when you don't know where your child is, at least you know they're not going to be on that driveway playing, that they're going to be in that safe place, and at least that's one barrier that we can make sure that they're not going to get run over. And the last one is to see. The see is probably more towards when you're driving the vehicle. Our vehicles have a massive blind spot in them. So you can certainly put a camera in the car, but they're not going to see it all the time. Sometimes we watch them too much. So we actually recommend that you take the long way around the vehicle in the first place and look around your car before you actually hop in. Then when you do hop in, don't be just fixated on one mirror or one camera. You need to be checking them all, because that's what they're there on the vehicle, to obviously limit the blind spot of that area of the car. You do that, keep checking constantly. at each mirror and camera and go at a slow pace. Because we can still do all of this and the accident can still happen because they are that quick and it just happens in an instant. And unfortunately, when it does happen, it's too late. So pretty much is to try and keep those three things: supervise, separate, and see. And hopefully we can prevent this accident from occurring.
Thank you, Peter. Those are vital tips and education for managing those critical areas. Is there anything else you'd like to add to help parents navigate that?
Yeah, I think the main thing is to keep the message out there, not to be aware that this can happen to anybody at any time. So if we can keep spreading this message, tell our family, our friends, tell everyone that not only just with children, but anyone that drives a vehicle are at risk of this of happening. So if we can get that message out there, it's the best way of being conscious this can happen, and we can prevent it if we're all obviously being aware of that it can happen to us, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, and look, with especially as we're all from Victoria and Melbourne, as we're opening up, this is even more critical, isn't it? To stay aware and even put up signage in the garage or around that in terms of those the 3 S's: supervise, separate, and see. As people are getting back into camping and travelling, and they haven't done those things for a long time, it's important to go back to basics, isn't it?
It certainly is. When we think about now, we've been in lockdown, and the numbers actually dropped. But we haven't heard of many accidents, which is fantastic. But my fear is that now that the COVID's disappearing, and that we're actually starting to get out and about, that this accident can happen because we're so concentrating on COVID and what the effect of COVID is at the moment, that we can go out there and forget all of these things, all these messages that we need. So I think it's really important that we certainly have this talk again and look about what we can do to obviously prevent it happening, because it can happen in a blink.
Thanks, Peter. I really appreciate that. Mel or Peter, did you have anything else that you wanted to add to today's briefing session?
Can I just say, what Peter and Emma have achieved in terms of, getting the message out there in Georgina's name has just been phenomenal. And I think there's so many, it takes such a brave family to talk about the experience, particularly these days with, all the social media that's out there. So, I think they've done a magnificent job, and the numbers, which we know are very real people and very real families, don't drop without that awareness and people realising that it can happen to them. And as with driveway runovers, it is usually a family member or a friend. It's someone that's known. It's not a stranger. It's not, something that's, completely sort of isolated. So I just think they've done an incredible job. And, if anyone watching this, like, the least that you can do is take that time to go through your home and make sure that it is safe, because, once it's too late, as Peter said, you can't change it. So, yeah, just take the time and take the action now. Don't put it on your to-do list. Do it straight away.
Great point.
Yeah, I'm right back at Kidsafe. I think what they do is an amazing job. And because, once again, these accidents happen, it's not just driveways. It's our own household has so many risks. So I think it's obviously what they try and do is make people aware that this is what we can do. But we actually need to, as a parent, we need to go and do those checks and see what we can find and improve our house as well. So certainly make sure you do it. Absolutely
vital advice. So I will thank you both for joining us today in the home safety session. I will say to everyone watching, thank you for your time and coming to join us as we talk about these really important issues. And you can come back and watch this anytime, share it with your friends, new parents, prospective parents, grandparents, everyone who's involved in caring and looking after your children. I will say that the links to INPAA, the Baby Safety Month, Kidsafe, and the Georgina Josephine Foundation websites and the checklist we mentioned today will be placed in the comments section underneath, and representatives from each organisation are also online for any questions you may have. So again, thank you so much, Mel, and thank you, Peter. And thank you, INPAA, for bringing us Baby Safety Month.